triangular.
Yeah.
That'll be helpful.
So we're gonna real quick. You can pay attention up here if you wish, or you can continue working at your own speed. But I'm gonna step through again the process of picking a plant symbol, duplicating it, and then tying it to a specific plant. And then I'll spend a little time talking about how to edit it as well, and some other things. So. Okay, first things first, we just want to go to the plant tool. And then we will go straight up to the preferences palette for that tool and click on the preferences button, which is the pencil and the wrench. And that will take us to this plant tools preferences window. Now we want to stay focused. We're going to go straight to definition on the left-hand side. That's at the top of the list on the left. And we will click on the button that has the plant symbol in plan. And this is where we will select the symbol that we want to start with. So when you click on that button, you get the current document plant symbols. Many of these have already been defined. You can start with one of those if you wish, or you can go down to the basic template plants, which is a few options down. And this is where those default plants live, so you could also use these as a starting point. I'm going to pick the basic plants, or plant basic tall shrub 01. Nice looking little symbol there. So once you've selected your symbol, you want to go straight to duplicate. And by clicking the duplicate button, that takes you to the next window, which is the edit plant definition window. So we have the plant tool preferences window and then the edit plant definition. When you get here, you want to go straight to get plant data. So again, it's sort of defining the symbol, duplicating it, and then going to get plant data.
Oh.
This is where some of the weirdness happens. This Vectorworks plants database pops up. We're going to go ahead and close it down. You can also just minimize it if you wish. That should pop you back to Vectorworks. If you don't see the Get Plant Data window, go ahead and click anywhere on Vectorworks and it should pop up. And this is where you click Select Plant Data. And then this useful version of the plant database pops up. And here we want to start at the top left corner and define with this pull down menu what type of plant we want to select. So we're going to go with shrubs. With shrubs selected, you can go down to the bottom or the left side, which is the list of all the different shrubs in this case to choose from. I will go with maybe a nice viburnum. I'll just go with the straight placatum. So viburnum placatum. Once you have that highlighted, the information in the plant selection or in the plant information window pops up. So it gives you the names and the sizes and all that good information. Click OK. That takes you out of the database and back to the plant definition window. So here we want to start on the left-hand side at the top and just sort of work our way down this list. Starting with insertion options, this is where we define the size. So the spread is the size of the plant as it will be shown graphically. For this, maybe I'll do it as 5 foot for the spread. The height, if we're doing it in 3D, this would be really important, but it's not so much for us. But I'll go ahead and show it as a 6-foot height.
So, Matt, here, where it says plant data spread, that's giving you approximately the spread, given the fact that you chose viburnum.
Correct. But don't take those sizes as gospel.
Right, and you don't typically show mature sizes when you are drawing your plant anyways.
Correct. So, you know, maybe a good rule of thumb is to think of not necessarily what the plant is going to come as the size, but maybe in 4 or 5, whatever years down the line. Because if you showed everything at the size they're going to come at, you'd have a very weird-looking planting plan. But if you showed them at all mature sizes, then you know, that would be skewed as well. So you want to find a nice, kind of comfortable zone that you want to work with.
And do you have a rule of thumb for the spacing?
So there's per plant you can usually find a rule of thumb if you look at nursery websites or anything like that to get some information on the spacing if you don't have knowledge of that on hand. But you know, you kind of learn that per plant as well, particularly as you use plants over time. So for this, maybe it's a, you know, also depending on the effect you want for that particular site. But for this, for a larger shrub, that'll get pretty big. You wouldn't want it to get too close because then it will just give you a hedge effect, unless that's what you want. For this, maybe I'd go 8 foot on center. You could go closer to, but I'll stick with 8 for the spacing. So for the viburnum, I have 5 foot spread, 6 foot height, and 8 foot spacing. Then we'll go from insertion points on the left down to schedule. This is where we start by copying the common name and pasting it up in the plant symbol name. So again, this is important because you want the plant symbol to be descriptive of the plant itself. So if you didn't name the symbol, it would show up in the future in your resource browser and in the pull-down menu for all the plants you've defined as simply, you know, basic shrub, tall shrub 01. So we don't want that.
Oh, that's where I messed up right there.
You always got to remember to name it. I'll show you how you can go back and select the ones you've already defined
Oh, that would be helpful.
and rename them if you need to.
Yeah.
We'll get to that after this. Okay? So again, this is where you want to name the symbol. The Latin name and the common name should be fine unless you want to change it for any particular reason. But we will change the plant's tag ID. The main reason for this is to make it appear in the plant schedule sort of grouped as trees, shrubs, and perennials. So we can start with, in this case, an S. For shrubs, if it was a tree, you could put a T. If it was a perennial, you could put a P. And then I will typically go to the Latin name and use the abbreviation. So V, capital B, lowercase p. And that is descriptive enough to let me know what it is. Again, if you knew the schedule size that you wanted, you could set that here as well. That could be a part of your plant schedule. If you wanted to do a cost estimate, you could give it a price code and so forth, or a price, I should say. Okay, so now we're not going to bother with those in this case, but we're going to go back over and under schedule on the left side is render. And again, under render, the main thing we want to do is simplify the symbol as much as possible because as you've probably seen, particularly if you're doing a lot of them, it can really tax the computer if there's a lot of extra lines and shadows and things like that that it has to render out. So for plant massing, I suggest selecting no additional outlines. That doesn't mean your plant symbol is not going to have an outline. It just means that Vectorworks is not going to add additional outlines or additional lines to that plant symbol. Plant massing, I keep unchecked as well for the same reasons. You can always go back, just like all of these settings, and override them in the object info palette after you've placed the individual plants. But for now, we're keeping it simple. For shadow, no shadow. And that is that. Plant data on the left is just a rehash of the information. If there's something you wanted to change in here, you could do that. But we'll just leave it as is. So those are the 4 tabs in the plant definition category. So this is the criteria that will be applied by default to each of the plant symbols for this particular plant. So the sizes, the schedule information, all of that will be by default and will apply to all of the plants. Click OK.
Is there any issue with using the exact same symbol but resizing it and naming it to a different plant?
Not at all. You just need to rename it like, you know, you could have viburnum small, viburnum big, viburnum whatever, however you'd like to do it. Typically, I find that just having one size for the plant symbols is preferred, and then you can override it for each case. Because I mean, even if you're planting 100 viburnum in a project, you can usually they're in massings. You don't have single viburnums. So maybe you could just click on each of the massings you have, and then change just for that instance or for those instances the sizes, and that will apply. Okay, so by clicking OK, that takes us back now to the plant tool preferences. Here's where we have to do a couple extra small steps before we go down the left-hand side. The first thing is you'll notice the button here with the plant symbol, it's still saying plant basic tall shrub 01. Here's where you just want to click on that symbol, and then in the opening window, select current documents, and find that viburnum we just created. It'll pop up.
I don't know, I know.
So, I know we've done this like 3 times, but mine never comes up with the right name, so we have to change it again. You told me this about.
Right, so
Yeah.
here what we're doing is we're trying to find the symbol that
Oh,
has the
no, I-
proper or correct name.
Got it.
And it should be the
Isn't it
same.
one right below?
Current,
Definition of
under
all?
current, yeah, current document.
Isn't it right to the left?
But that should be a viburnum. I seem to have.
But that strawberry snowball was the name.
But that's what
Oh,
you,
it is a
that's what you
snowball.
put inside.
Good call. Good call. I was looking for the right thing. That's right. So by again clicking that button, going to current document, you should find the symbol within this group of current symbols to select. You find it, go ahead and click on it, and then it should in fact say the name of the symbol, the correct name. Now we can step through the left side. Now again, just general overview. These options, at least the first options for size and render and schedule, they should all be pointing back to the default settings we've already created in the plant definition window. So if I click on size on the left, the options should be, do you want to use the default definition that we just set up, or do you want to override it? We don't want to override any of these yet because we want to use the default by default. So make sure that they all say use plant definition. For some reason the spacing seems to like to go to custom spacing.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't have
keep an
to-
eye on that guy. This is also the window where you want to make sure that the plant is checked to show up on the plant list, which again by default it should be checked. The schedule is next on the list. Again, use plant definition, all the way down the line. Render. Again, use plant definition. And I'll also mention that if you set this up once, again, it should hold from project to project. But it is always good to kind of come in here and just confirm. Annotation. This is one area where we did make some changes. So under annotation, for the polygon display, again, those are the lines that show up in between each of your proposed plants when you place them on a plan. If you want those turned on by default, this is the place to do that. So you change that from none to center solid, which will give you a solid line going from the center point of each instance of the plant. This is also where we can define the tick style and size. So that again is the X or the circle defining whether it's a proposed or an existing plant. We want proposed. So next to tick style, we can select cross. For the tick size, an 18th of an inch is the size it will be when it prints out. So depending on the size of your sheet and the scale you're working at, none of that really matters. It's going to be an eighth of an inch when it prints out on your sheet.
So mine says 0.005 inches.
Right. So
Is that
0.005
Mhm.
works really well for our scales, for what we're working at. So 0.005, I would suggest.
Oh,
Or
okay.
0.05, I think it is.
Oh, so take the O out. Oh,
Which is, no, OPA.
0.05.
Right.
And then we have the next two, which is plant rotation and plant scale. So this is where you can define it to rotate the plant symbol a little bit from each instance to another,
Oh,
and also change the size of it. Again, with the principle of keeping it as simple as we can, I suggest keeping it as a horizontal and plant scale is fixed. And then you can come in and change those settings in the object info palette after you've placed the plant. So let Vectorworks get it in there. And then if you want to change it after the fact, you can do it in the object info palette and it won't overtax the computer necessarily. Okay? So center solid for the polygon display, cross for tick style, 0.05 for tick size, plant rotation is horizontal, and plant scale is fixed. Last one on the left is the tag. We do want a display tag. So next to the display, if it's not already selected, you can select left or right. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Remember, we're going to place the plants, and then you're going to end up arranging all of those tags, regardless of if it starts to the left or to the right. The class, we do want to define a class for all of the tags that pop up automatically when you place a plant. And if you recall, in the plants components classes, there is a class specifically for plant tags. So make sure that that is selected. And it should read plants components tags next to class. Approach angle, shoulder angle, not too concerned with it. It'll just come out nice and straight and horizontal. The bubble, if you wanted a bubble around your call out, you could add one here. I don't typically do that by default. The top, center, and bottom refer to the 3 lines of text that you can apply for each tag. We have been working with just 1 line of text, and by default we've been using the common name and the quantity. So if we're just having 1 line of text, you just want to define one of these, the top, center, or bottom. So we've been using the top, and we've had it as quantity and common name. And then, with that defined, we don't have to define the other 2. And then for the checkboxes, we want to make sure enable tag shoulder line is selected. That gives you the angled line and then the straight line when it comes up to the text for the leader lines. Otherwise, it would just be a single line. And then the other 2, you don't have to actually tag. Okay, so those are a lot of little settings in there. Like I said before, if you do that once in the file, it should hold for the next plants that you define. So you shouldn't have to go through and do this each time. If you do it once, that should hold. But it's always a good idea to come through and just make sure that nothing's changed in the version. Okay, so with all of that defined now, we can click OK. And once we click OK, we should find ourselves still in the plant tool. And when we move our mouse around, we see that we get a preview of the plant that we're about to plant. And that's the plant that we just created. Before you start planting, make sure you're in the right plant option along the top left corner in the preferences bar. I'm going to go with the 3rd option, which is going to use the spacing we defined. And if I wanted to do maybe a line of viburnum on the back of my property in the bed I've already defined, I could do start by clicking here and then moving along the back side.
So when you're managing your own projects, do you have like 100 plant symbols in there, and then you're always like shuffling around through 100 plant symbols, or is there some way of organizing it so it's a little more?
I work I have a big library of plant symbols, but they're all named and they all show up alphabetically, and it's easy enough to kind of find them within my little world, the way I work. I know we've talked a little bit about like defining things like you could add a T, an S, or a P for at the beginning of the symbol name, so that you have those kind of show up in clusters. So I know Adele's talked about doing an N for native plants as well, so you have a sort of a cluster of native plants. You could, if you get really fancy, you could create a Vectorworks library, which again is just a Vectorworks file, and in that file you have all of your perennials, and then you have another file that has all of your trees, another file that has all your shrubs, or however you want to organize that. And then in the resource browser here, you could use that file option to switch back and forth to show those particular plants in your resource browser, and then you can just pick them from there. But I've always found it I've always found it easiest to just embed them in the file and work with them as a big clump.
What if I get a clump of name labels? I only need one label for the whole bunch.
Right. So the trick there is just making sure you select the right planting option before you plant them. So it sounds like you have probably a lot of individual ones, and they each have a symbol or a tag. If you pick, you probably have this first option selected along the top left. If you pick the second or third or fourth or fifth, really, that allows you to do multiple plants, and then at the end of it, get a single tagline.
So how do I get it off once I get it off?
I would replant them.
So just delete.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the particular situation, but yeah, I can help you with that. Let me first kind of go through here and touch on a couple extra points here for the plants before we move on. So I have planted my 3 Japanese snowball, and again, we have a situation where it comes with a tagline. The tag's already there. I want to move it. So again, the best way to move it is by clicking on the plant or the tagline, and with the selection tool, and ensuring that up at the top left, you're in the second option. So again, for the selection tool, the first button in the preferences bar allows you to click things and move them entirely without changing the proportion or the size of them. But if you use the second option, then you get those blue grips. The blue grips and the selection tool allow you to change the size and the proportion of an object, as well as just move them if you put them just right. But for us, for our purposes for this, we'll get the blue grips here at the call out. If I want to just move the text, I will use the sort of middle blue grip here. I'll click once, and I'll move down to about where I want it to land. I'll make my second click. You'll see that the Japanese snowball, the text itself is still on the left side. If I want to move it to the right, I can click on the blue grip closest to the text. So I'll click once, and I'll move horizontally over to the right side of the leader line, and make a second click, and that will automatically flip the text to the other side of the call out, and it's sort of in a nice location now. Let's see here. What else do we have? If I double click on the plant that we've just created, so I'm just clicking anywhere on the plant symbol, our edit plant window pops up. So the 2D graphic is what I'd select and click OK if I wanted to go into that edit window. So again, this is the moment where the drawing kind of goes away, visually at least, and you are left with just one instance of the plant. And this is the tan border and this exit plant button up at the top right. This is where, with the selection tool, you can start sort of dissecting that symbol and changing all of its qualities. So you see that all of the bits and pieces are selectable. If I wanted to change the gradient that it makes up this the shrub fill, I could click on it and in the attributes palette change that from a red to maybe a nice green or a terrible rainbow situation. I could, if I wanted to simplify it, I could get rid of some of these interior lines by simply clicking on them and deleting them. If I wanted to make them a little thicker for some reason, I could do that. And so forth. So you really have all of the options or opportunities here that you would have just drawing a symbol and your planting or on your drawing board. So again, you can change line weights, line types, color, fills, all of that. You could even decide to delete the thing and start with a new symbol completely. So if I wanted to do an even more simplified version of that, I could click my circle tool, and then be mindful of this. Anything you do in here still falls under the same classification rules as drawing on your drawing board. So I'd want to make sure before I drew a new plant outline that I was, in fact, in the plant component outline class. So I'd have to go to my navigation window, classes, double click on outline, and then I could draw my new outline. There then if I wanted to fill, I could select one of those outlines that I just created, and I could go to fill and select a gradient there. Oh, that's back. And then pick another color. After I've created that fill, maybe I want to send the fill to back so I see all of the line work, the interior line work when that fill is in there. So I'm just going to click on the fill, do a right click, go down to send to back, and I still have now my interior line work is visible. Now, I just created a fill, so that's not an outline any longer. So what I need to do is put that on the proper class. So I'll click on the fill, and since I've already drawn it, I'm going to change the class in the object info. So right now, when I click on that, I can go to class, and I see it's in components, plants components outlines. What I want is plants components color fill. Okay, so when you're drawing these new symbols, you want to make sure that the components are all landing on the proper class. Otherwise,
you don't, when you try to make it clean and clear, black and white,
right. Yeah, exactly. So if you try to control the visual aspects of these symbols through the classes, you'll find that that doesn't always work if they aren't drawn properly. So if I wanted to add some blooms, I would want to make sure that I'm in the plants components bloom class, and then I could start adding blooms. Okay? So just remember all of those class rules apply when changing or drawing within this plant edit window. So now, if I was happy with this for some reason, I could go ahead and click Exit Plant, and I would find that the 3 viburnum that I had planted before now match that new graphic attribute or symbol that I just created. It looks great. So that was the 2D object in the edit window. I can double click on that plant again. 2D graphics is what we just did. I can now go, let's try definition. So definition would be if, for some reason, you have planted the plant and you realize, oh, my default size is weird, like it's too big, or the spacing isn't what you thought it would be or should be, so you want to change the spacing. Or if your name isn't correct, so the plant symbol doesn't have the right name, or whatever. So here's where you go for that definition. Click OK, and it takes us back to this window. So again, the insertion options can all be modified here. The schedule options can all be modified here. The name for the symbol can be modified. And all of these render options can be changed here as well. Okay? So again, this will change the default settings for this file. So any other viburnum that I had set out or already planted on this plan, if I change the default settings in here in the definitions window, it will change it for all of those instances. So let's say I decided the spacing should be 6 feet instead of 8. Click OK. Wait a second or two. Wait a few more seconds. There. And now my 3 viburnum are closer than they were before. Interestingly, now my tagline doesn't actually touch the plant anymore. So I'll just come down here, click on that blue grip at the end of the leader line, and snap to the center point of one of those shrubs. Okay. So that's how you change the default definitions.
You said that it would retroactively change the ones you've already planted?
Mm-hmm. For, yes.
Looks like it's not, but I probably just looked back.
Okay, we can take a look at that. If you want to change just that instance of the planting, so you've decided that, you know, I like these, but I want to change them, I want to modify them in some way, including graphically, you can click on that instance of the planting and go into your object info palette. And you'll find that you have a number of options here, including things like deciding whether or not you want the polygon display to remain. So if you have the lines shown now, you can turn those off here. If you want to change the size of the tick, that comes up. You could change that here as well. This is where you can override the defaults by saying that I do want the plant rotation here. So I'll go ahead and make it random. And you see now that the rotation of that particular symbol is randomized. I could also change the plant scale. It had been fixed before, but maybe I want it to be randomized by 15%. So you see now that some are a little bit bigger, some are a little smaller. The massing outline actually wouldn't apply because there's no overlap in this symbol, but you could set that here. Or actually, sorry, the outline is different. I could put 3 outlines or just create more lines around those symbols unnecessarily in my mind. So it's like, no. Again, massing plants is what doesn't really affect these because they're not close enough, but you could set that here if you wish. And then you could have it display a shadow. Oh, nice shadow. Not really. Okay, and then there's also the tag information you could change and so forth. So this is where you could change, again, just that specific instance of the plant and not monkey with the whole default for everything else. Okay, anything else on the plant front that I haven't covered? It's kind of a quick review. And again, now that we have these Japanese snowball, and then we also have that planting area that I created earlier, and I have some Kusa dogwood and a hydrangea, I can go to my classes, double click on, do I have new? I don't have my plant list class on here, but I'm going to go ahead and pretend like I'm selecting or activating my proposed text class, and then I'm going to go up to Tools, Reports, Choose Schedule. In the window that pops up, I'm going to scroll down to Plant List Basic, click OK, select Replace the worksheet in the current document, and click OK, and then click anywhere on my plan. And I get the plant list with all of the plants that are currently on my plan. And then, if again you want to change the graphic quality really more than anything of that plan or of that class schedule, you can double click on it and it opens this edit window. Kind of works a little bit like what's that, Excel?
Yeah.
You can click on some of the cells, like the title, and you can then click in the edit window for that particular cell and type in, new plans schedule L. And it will change that cell. But like I mentioned before, if I tried to click on any of the quantities, it would not allow me to make the change there. So the uneditable cell. So you are limited a little bit. If you want to do something like where I don't have any schedule size information, so if I wanted to try to make this schedule as small as I can, I would just minimize that column by clicking on one of the dividers. I can move it all the way to the edge and essentially get rid of that column altogether. Let's see. And if we wanted to change the size of the text, again, to make it a smaller schedule on our plan, we could select all the cells, go to Format, Cells, and then you get options like the type of numbering that you wanted to use, whether it's numbered or scientific or currency or any of that. But for our purposes, the font is very helpful because then you can select a different size. So if I want to make it really small, like an 8 point, I can do that, click OK, and then all of my text gets smaller. And now, after I've done that, I can come in and make the columns even narrower. Maybe get rid of the remarks. OK. And then at the end of that, I have a nice compact little plant schedule to work off of.
I'm sorry, how did you get to the plant schedule to edit it?
So you just double click on the schedule, and that pops up the edit window.
The kitties.
Hey, Matt,
Uh-huh.
when you're line up your plant ID labels,
Uh-huh.
and you're trying to, there's a setting that is preventing me from moving the actual labels. It wants to move the whole thing. It won't let me, the little blue grips for the shoulder and everything won't come up.
Are you in the second button? Yes. So if you have that issue, like the selection tool is one of those that's sometimes you don't think, why do I need options for a selection tool? But it makes a big difference if you're trying to manipulate something. At that point, it should get you there. Okay. So, are there any other items, that we can cover real quick?
Back in plans, you were gonna show us how to like delete or clean up the ones that we had that were like untitled.
We just covered that.
Oh.
So
How
that's
about
where.
just deleting one?
So that's where you can. Well, we'll cover
I
it quick.
let them delete it.
If you have a plant that you know the title's wrong, the name's wrong, the size is
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh.
Double click on it.
No,
Definition.
yes, we did do
Okay.
that. No.
And then that's
How about
where you
just
can
deleting
change
it?
all of
That was the
that.
thing I guess I missed. No,
Okay.
I got that.
If you have a plant that you know you'll never use again,
Yeah,
and it's just cluttering your list and all of that.
that's in the resource browser.
Resource
Right,
browser.
that's what I thought.
So this is the place where you can come in and say, you know what, I'm never going to use which one? Which one should I get rid of?
We don't have to. It's just,
This coniferous shrub 01. Let's just say that. So you could select it in the resource browser, do a right click, go to delete. It will ask you, are you sure? And you say yes.
mine,
And then it will disappear from the plan forever.
mine does not do that. You just right click it.
You click on there, you select the one you want, do a right click on it.
Uh-huh.
You don't get a pop-up window.
I do get a pop.
Delete is not an option.
No.
Are you in the current file or in a linked file? Click the home button. Look at my screen.
Got it. Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah,
You get
absolutely.
it?
That was the difference. Thank you.
Okay.
That was it.
Cool.
Have to be in the current.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. That was my key. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So I'm trying to manipulate a plant schedule and like I'm trying to figure out how to have in the plant schedule both the common name and the botanical name in it.
Okay.
So if I'm in the edit version of that,
So the edit version is great for changing how it's already set up, like the default
okay.
columns. It's not great for sort of adding a new column for a different data set. What you'd want to do is probably go to reports and choose schedules, because we've been using sort of the basic plant list. And if you go there and you kind of scroll through, they have some other options for the plant lists. You may find one that matches your particular likes and fits all of the data information you're looking for. If you don't, you can go to Tools, Reports, and instead of selecting Choose Schedule, you can say Create Report. And then you can type in what type of reports, and you can go through and sort of find the different. How does this work now? Actually, this has changed a little bit. Let's see here. I'll have to actually look into this and see how they have it set up now. But you used to have a moment where you could select plant symbols, and then it would give you essentially a list of. Let me go back to this. Similar to this list, but like, oh, here we go. Okay. There we go. Aha. So, in the create report, you have an option down here listing objects with record plant.
Mm-hmm.
So with by selecting plants, it populates this list where you should have things like the plant ID. You click on that and select add. You're essentially picking items from this list to be included in your custom worksheet.
So does it have common name and Latin name and that?
Kinda. It should.
And
Botanic.
name, okay.
And common.
Yeah.
And can you switch it around so that you can determine which column you want it to be in?
Yes.
Okay. And
So if you want any comments, keep those at the bottom. You could do spacing, schedule size.
what does schedule size mean?
So that would be if you wanted, you know, a 1 gallon container or a 4-inch core or pot or plug. So I've created this kind of plant ID, botanic name, common name, spacing, schedule, and comments. And maybe I'll call this my NJS plant list. Click OK. And then it pops me right into this window, which is the result of that automatic quantity. That would be helpful in a plant list. But let's pretend like the quantity list is there.
Will this be on our notes map?
I can. I usually don't cover this, but
Okay.
yeah, I can type this up.
I didn't think you created your own plant schedule.
Exactly. And then you probably have to find it here at this point. So just a quick point. The resource browser has all of the symbols and gradients and lines and all. It also is where your worksheets, or in our case, plants lists, will live as well. So these are all the different plant lists I've created in this file in the past. A lot of this is just from other classes that I've used this example before, so there's some repeats here. But it also is where that NJS plant list I just created lives. So if I double click on that, it pops up and it lives there. So botanic name, common, spacing, schedule. Cool? And then, okay, any other questions? All right, so next week, how many of you are going to be here? Good.
And I think we have quite a few.
We have a few more coming in as well.
Yeah.
So next week, what I typically do, because it's not always like this direct where we go from one class to the next, I think some of it's going to have to be a little bit of review for the students who haven't taken this for like a year. And it's mainly going to be like polyline and how we do polylines with dimensions and all of that. So it's all good for all of us to hear again and work through. So of course I would urge you to be here. But I will send out tomorrow. I've got a link and everything for the book. It's going to be still, they don't have a 2016 version of the book yet, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be that different. So we're going to work off the 2015 book, and that will come with the DVD that has all of the files you'll need for the class as well. If we end up needing anything, I don't think we will, but if we do need anything from that book for the first class, I will provide it. So I will have the files, I'll have all of that information. But this week, go ahead and order the book. It is $75 for the book, but it comes with a DVD. So it is a good book, though, to have. Again, that will step you through a number of processes that you will use over and over again. So it's a good resource. So keep that in mind. It's not just a one hit wonder.
So next
That
week
should be good.
starts the new.
So next week starts the new series of classes. So we will sadly leave this all behind and start a third project from scratch. But the big difference will be, I mean, we'll still use a lot of the same tools we've used before, but we'll learn a lot of new tools, and a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with drawing in 3D. And so we'll be drawing in 2 dimensions for the first couple of classes, and then we'll kind of pop into the 3D world and realize, oh, we've been drawing 3D the whole time.
I like that.
Cool. So, should be good. Should be fun. All right. Well, that's it.
All right. I'm not on your list yet, but I'm going to make that happen.
Good.
Okay,